Whoa, turn red. Bam. What is up, Rad Potential YouTube, and welcome to teaching somebody who's never built a rotary engine how to build a rotary engine. And by doing that, we're going to produce a video for you guys that is like the total assembly of a rotary. Generally, when people ask me to do that, there's other full assembly videos on YouTube that I direct you guys to, just because I don't need to recreate the wheel. But I did think it would be cool to show me kind of teaching Calvin, and then we got a couple other buddies that are going to come by whenever we go to stack it. Basically how everything works, and like for them to do it and me to just kind of direct them. So we will be going through basically all the tips and tricks that I've got for building these things. First things first, you need to make sure that you have every bit of your engine super clean. So we have cleaned these once, twice, then they moved from Nashville to here, and then we cleaned them again, and then they moved from the other table to this table, and we cleaned them again. So now everything's perfectly clean. We're going to start assembling the rotors here. So the big important thing when you go to put your rotors together is you need to decide which one is going to be the front rotor and the rear rotor. On 12As, they're noted, but on most 13B stuff, it's not. So the only part that matters really on a front or rear rotor when you go to put one of these together, we're going to leave 12As out of the picture, is when you go to put your oil control rings in, those control rings are directional. Each rotor faces an opposite direction in the engine, right? So on the front rotor, the gear is the front of the front rotor, and on the rear rotor, the gear is the rear of the rear rotor. That matters because on your oil control rings, you're going to see two small little tabs hanging down. So you can see, I'll put it kind of on my fingers there. You can see the split in the oil control ring. So when you hold this oil control ring in your right hand, so I'm going to hold it in my right hand like this. See how the round edge, I'll put some text on it if it's focused enough, but this round edge points down. So if you hold it in your right hand, the round side is down. That means it goes on the rear of a rotor. Doesn't mean it goes on the rear rotor. It just means it goes on the rear of a rotor. So this one's a rear one. Now, there will be others, like this one here, that if you hold it in your left hand and the round edge right here is facing down, this goes on the front of a rotor. So on the front rotor, this one, the gear faces forward, left hand, round edge down. That's going to go on the front of the front rotor. So for Calvin, who's going to build the rear rotor, he's going to be putting the ones that have the round edge down on the non-gear side of the rotor. So when you go to insert these, by the way, there's a whole section in the service manual explaining all of that. It's also on the wall in my shop. When you go to install these oil control rings, the round nub will go down into, there's little holes that are down, kind of machined into the groove down here. So you'll see right here, there's a little hole right there that's lit up. The round edge needs to sit in that hole. And whenever you lay it down in there, there's a small ring and a big ring. When you lay this ring down in here, you can slide this over until it falls down in that hole. So now you'll see right here, we're down in that hole. What you want is for this to not spin if you push on the flat edge. So you're going to get that drop down in there. You want to be able to push on this flat edge right here and have it catch in that hole, which is hard to do with one hand. But generally this would stay down in there, and when you push on this, it won't spin. And the reason that is because these oil control rings don't actually spin on this rotor. They stay attached to the rotor, and that spring keeps them from spinning. So note that when you go to put these together. So we're going to go ahead and put these oil control rings and their seals together. You will notice too, I'll set you guys down, that you have a small one and a big one. The small one is a female, whereas it has a groove on the outside of it. The inside one, or the big one, has the groove on the inside of it. They're kind of a pain to get each O-ring in here, so you'll want to lube them up with oil, and we'll work the O-rings in. The inner ones are super easy, you just pop them over. Once you get that done on this oil control ring, there's a little groove right here. You can kind of see the groove there. That groove needs to line up with the flat edge of the oil control ring spring. So there's 2 grooves on them most of the time. Pick one. You're going to line that up perfectly with the edge of that spring. After you have the round edge in the dot, you'll line that up perfectly, and then you'll push this down into the rotor. We have this little wooden handle here, which you'll see us do in a second. Sometimes these can be a real pain to get into the rotor, and you'll need something to help push it down. Do not, I repeat, do not try to take your thumbs and slide them around this and push it in. You will slice your thumbs open, and then building the rest of your engine sucks because you're bleeding. So, note that. We're going to go ahead and put these together. Alright, so I'll repeat that on a different thing. This will be running its little time lapse. So, the Sharpie, basically, what I wanted to do, so I was going to have you build the rear one. So I was going to mark this as front.
Okay.
And then mark this as front. The big F. And you can put rears on yours. Yeah, they're a little pain in the ass.
Yeah, I noticed.
So there's a big O-ring and a small O-ring.
Ah, fuck.
The
I
big
probably
one.
need the small one, don't I?
No, the big one goes on the inside, the small ones go on the outside. So we can lay all these out. You'll see the diameters.
I got a big one. Okay.
Yeah. The big one will go like what you're doing. The small ones will go on the inside ring. So kind of just kind of oil it up. And the actual metal rings themselves do not matter front or rear. It's just the springs that have a direction.
Okay.
So oil this guy up because you don't want to tear it when you go to put it on the rotor. Take these, take your oil control ring, slide that baby in, pop that thing all the way around, and you get this done. I tend to always build my rotors like the night before. I want to stack the whole engine, but we can do it all at the same time today. The way these
That
guys.
is a royal pain in the ass.
Yeah, welcome to it.
Okay, I'm done.
So then you'll have 2 small ones to do as well from this front line. So you see those kind of just pop in there. There's no big reason to make sure this isn't twisted or rolled. It doesn't really matter. And so I've never worried about it, and I've never had a problem with it. So, yeah, these suck. The big ones suck. So you gotta like get the whole thing started, and it's hard to push a rope.
Mm-hmm.
And then it likes to just pop out of on you on the other side, and bleep. There we go. This is just regular old engine oil using to lube these up. It's a big thing. You don't want to cut one of these when you try to push it in here. That would be no bueno. Yeah, those ones are easy.
Yeah, it just popped right over.
Alright, so once we get all 4 of those done, I'm just going to clean hands up here. Put this side sit right there. Take a little bit of oil and run some around on this. That kind of center groove, the tall one that's sticking up, and we'll split the middle, and that's what the rubber seals actually ride on. Just kind of lubing the edges of that. Make sure it's not going to fall apart when you push it in, because this does require some force. Like I said, do not try to do it with your thumbs, because you will cut your thumbs. I have done it before. Alright, sweet. So, now, Calvin has, we're both working on the gear side of the rotor, right? I'm doing the front rotor, he's got the rear rotor. That means that I have the front of a rotor and he has the rear of a rotor sitting up. So, Calvin's going to want to take his in his right hand and see that the round edge is down in his right hand, and he's going to put that in his groove. Go ahead and do that. And you're going to see there's that little dot down in there, and you should be able to get the round edge. You should be able to get the round edge to sit down in the dot, and then most of the time you can try to push on it, and it should hold itself, but if not, just make sure it's lined up, because when you push the oil control ring down, that will push the spring down in place and you won't have an issue. Another thing is that if you think about it, how this is working, when the rotor rotates, it's designed such that if it were to fall out of that groove, it's going to spin one full rotation, and the spring pressure should push the dot down into that hole, or push the spring down into that dot again, if it rotates around. At some point it should all catch and fall in place, but I just like to make sure that it's all lined up right off the rip. So both of them will be the same. The inner one and the outer one will be right hand, round side down for the rear of the rotor, which is what you have.
Round side down.
Oh. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one.
You need a small one out of this box. I think it's this guy here.
It's Johnny.
Yep. So, and for me, there's another right rear, that'll be my other one. For me, I'll need, because I'm working on the front of my rotor, left hand, round side down, drop in right here. And then there should be a big one. Is that this big one?
That was the other big one, yeah.
Okay, this is right side down, so that'll be mine.
This is the left side down.
Sweet. So, left hand, left side down. Drop mine in. Where's the big dot? Nope, right there. I think I've got a little pocket screwdriver back here. Go ahead, just make sure that's in the dot. Make sure that that doesn't slide. So the spring action works there. So that one's good. This one will be down in its dot. And ready for its. So, just a little check. Now, kind of go ahead and rotate your rotor so you're on the same side as where those slits are in your seals, just so you can see them easier. Now we're going to take an oil control ring, which is the metal casing with the rubber ring in it. Don't forget to put the rubber rings in. You're going to find that little notch in the oil control ring itself. You're going to line that notch up with the flat edge of your spring, so you're going to see that flat edge of your spring sticking up. You're going to do your best to line that up as perfect as you can on there. And then you got to push that whole oil control ring down in there. You want the rubber groove needs to go over the metal, and this is where it gets super hard. You may have to stand up to do it. Basically, you're going to work that thing all around. Just do not slide your thumb, because you will cut your thumb. If I haven't made that clear already. You kind of just want to push the whole thing, every bit of it, all the way down, all the way around. And if the seal looks like it's getting caught, you can kind of help it, but it should work its way down there as you go around it. And it'll kind of just, it won't really like pop into place, but you'll feel it get easier. But
I pushed to one side, the other side come out.
yeah. Well, let's push through this damn table. Okay. Like I said, you just don't want to slide your thumb on that, because it will cut you. Alright. What this?
Maybe.
The hammer is nice because you can really just point pressure the one side in. And you can slide that on there. You don't have to worry about cutting your hammer. Bloop. And it won't like I said, it won't pop, but you'll feel it just go past it. It's like a nice little threshold. And just make sure there's no remnants of a cut oil control ring on the edge of your rotor. And then you can see, which it's probably hard too from over here, and I'll show you once we get the other one in, but this is springy, so it moves up and down, because when the housings and irons get put together, this will be pushed out against that iron, because this circle here doesn't rotate in relation to the motor, but that circle is going to rub on the face of the iron. Fun fact. So inner one, same thing. Find your little groove on there. check the dot, make sure it didn't move while you were doing the other one. Line it up to the best you can, and then go ahead and just push the whole thing in. Typically the inner ones kind of like to go in a little bit easier, but sometimes everything can be a pain. Alright, got it? So at this point, I would go ahead and flip your rotor over and do the oil control rings on the other side before you start putting any other stuff in there. As you can see, that takes a lot of force to get those in there. They won't fall out, you don't have to worry about them falling out. But go ahead and get the other ones in before you start building the rest of your rotor, as those other pieces they like to fall out when you're doing stuff. So now Calvin and I have switched roles, so he's building the front of the rear rotor, so he's going to want left hand, left side down. I'm going to want right hand, right side down for the rear of my front rotor. Alright, so at this point, make sure everything's still clean. You've been moving and touching and feeling and groping stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and flip mine back over just so I'm on the front side of my rotor again. Not that it's any... At this point, it really doesn't matter at all. But just for the sake of having a reference, which I will show you here in a second. Got it?
I believe so.
That's the hardest part of building a rotor. Fucking sucks. Hurt your thumbs, hurt your hands.
Well, I still got my thumbs intact, so we did good.
But can you see how if you slide your thumb on that sharp
Yeah,
edge,
oh yeah,
it would dice it right off.
I can see it.
Nice machine cut edge. Alright, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and start putting hard seals and stuff in your rotor. And what you need to do before you do this, which I've already done it, take a side seal or a used side seal or whatever and just always run it through each one of these grooves. You shouldn't feel anything catching on that side seal. That's going to ensure that the side seal groove is completely clean. Same thing, the corner seals. There's a tool you can buy that fits in here that'll clean this out perfectly. I have a set of used side seals, some picks. You can just scrape all that out. The other thing as well that you want to check before you go to put anything together is that an apex seal will slide cleanly through this groove. Sometimes in shipping, you can drop them in your shop, do whatever. You can bend the corners of these, and this groove won't be straight, and you'll get an apex seal that won't fit, right? So make sure they're clean, make sure everything passes through. Now, we're going to start on the gear side, just one of my little tips and tricks, how I organize things. This engine wasn't taken apart by me, so everything was kind of just in bags, but if you've seen me build engines before, on the channel I have little trays, everything's labeled and numbered. On the gear side of your rotor, you're going to have a letter stamped into the side. There's a bunch of different ones, but it should be like A, B, C, D, E. That letter is the balance of the rotor. You want to make sure that your pair of rotors is matched within one letter. So both of these are B's. You can run a B with an A. You can't run a B with a D. They're just not right. So I use that letter as a reference point for all of my seals. Every seal that's closest to that letter is number 1. So the apex seal closest to that letter is number 1, the corner seal closest to that letter is number 1, and the side seal closest to that letter is number 1. As you go around the rotor clockwise, it would be 1, 2, 3. Flip the rotor over, take the letter to the other side, 4, 5, 6. And in my trays, that's how I would number everything and keep track of it, because each one of your side seals, although this groove is pretty much perfectly machined, there is a different tolerance and length in that groove, and you will have, on a very tightly built engine, each side seal will be clearanced to fit in its own spot. So you want to make sure that that's all done. On this motor, it was all taken apart. We're going to reuse the side seals and springs. So all we're going to do is put these in here, make sure that none of them have a huge, side-to-side gap, and we'll just keep going around and put it all together. Same thing with the corner seals and apex seals. So the apex seals will go in whenever you actually put the rotors into the motor, because there's no way to hold them in. Some people will build these with rubber bands around this and then put it in and work the rubber bands off. I've tried it. It's just kind of a pain. More power to you if you can do it, but I haven't had issues with dropping apex seals down into the rotor once it's actually getting stacked in the engine. So right now, what we're going to go ahead and start with is corner seals and springs, and then we're going to stick the side seals and springs in there. So these are solid corner seals. A regular corner seal is going to have a rubber insert inside of it. Those you will put in after you put your apex seals in when it goes into the motor. So basically you're going to take your corner seal, right here, little guy, inspect everything, make sure it's right. you'll have a corner seal spring, this little guy, and you can go around to each one of these and you're going to see they have a groove in it for the apex seal right there, the little groove at the top. Go ahead and just drop a corner seal spring down into each one of these holes. I'll give Calvin 3 of them. There should be 3 per side. I tend to not put any grease or stuff on the springs themselves, but you'll just need to get it in there, and you can always just rotate it right.
Groove down in the spot.
Yep, so the groove in the spring will line up with the apex seal groove. And you can kind of take a pocket screwdriver and straighten them, or use a side seal or something if you have spares laying around. So these solid corner seals, some people run them with the flat side out. So you can see here, there's a side with a groove down into it. There's a side that's flat. We usually run them with the groove side facing out. More of a personal preference thing. I think that edge is sharper. It's going to give you a better seal, I guess. So what I would do here is we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of grease. This is just standard axle grease. Might be a little thick for assembly lube, but it tends to hold everything together. Put a little grease on the back side of it, and then you'll drop each corner seal down in there. The most important thing to check is that this corner seal moves up and down freely. So you want this to react like a spring. You can see it moving up and down. If it goes down and gets stuck, you need to clean that hole out better. The grease is there simply to retain that corner seal, such that if you go to flip the rotor over to build the other side, they don't fall out. But you see, I just dumped a corner seal spring out, but the seal stayed in. So that's why that's there. So just a light little dab of grease on the back side of it, drop them all in. That'll hold the seal and the spring in there. Make sure it's springy. And when we get to putting the side seals in, we'll basically lather the whole side of this in grease, such the side seals don't fall out either. So, see here, good spring pressure, nothing's getting stuck. One of the things to make sure too, these corner seal springs are the 3rd gen style, so they're big and thick. A stock one is more like a paperclip wire. So sometimes those can be left in there, so you want to make sure you have all those out. So once we get the corner seals in, I'm going to jump ahead here as my camera battery's looking a little dead. Your corner seal or your side seal springs have the little wing tips on them, can point up or down. So there's the edge of the seal spring, it'll point up. Always put the outer edges pointing up, just more spring pressure going up, and you're going to lay the side seal spring down in each one of these little grooves. Sometimes they like to pop out. These are one of the easiest things to lose in your shop. They'll kind of go flying if you drop a wrench on them or something. So just be aware of that. Go ahead and make sure you get one in every spot before you start putting the side seals in. That way you don't forget one. So you see the little wing tips at the end?
Yeah.
Make those point up. Because that's more upward pressure, I guess. Now, on your side seals, if you're reusing them, you'll see little marks on the back of the side seal where the springs have been pressing on. That's the side that you want to always put down in the rotor, because the other side is going to be perfectly flat. So we'll set these down in here. And then basically, you always want to make sure, A, these spring up and down, but B, they don't have a ton of side-to-side play. So I'll kind of tend to build one whole side of them if I'm reusing these and just check them. And then if one's more than the other, maybe I'll go to my stack of side seals and try to find one that fits better. When you build one of these with new side seals and you have to cut them, you will take a rotor of sorts or something and you'll have to file the edge of this to get it to the right tolerance, and you'll stick a feeler gauge in between the corner seal and the side seal. So basically all we got to do is put the rest of this together, and then we'll recap with you here in a little bit. Spider in there. See?
You have to be just one way down in there.
Yeah, we got a spider in the engine.
Maybe that's sticking. It's never gonna break now. Oh, it went in the hole. little further in.
That won't go further.
Little spider down in there, in the E shaft.
The that's just a balance hole, so it's just there's no into it.
Damn.
Nothing's coming out.
It's not gonna be balanced anymore.
Yeah.
See, there's a spider in there now.
Alright, so this is the stationary gear O-ring here. Goes on the back of this. If you don't have a stationary gear O-ring, you will replace your rear main seal like probably 3 times before you realize that that's your problem.
Is that
Not
what
that
was
I've
wrong
done
with
that
the vert?
before. Yeah, that was what was wrong with the vert.
It's funny. I remember you taking that apart a bunch.
Alright, y'all. Well, I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We're closing this video out back at the Rad Ranch because yours truly wasn't as super prepared with his camera stuff as he wished he would have been when we were building that engine. So, the camera died after we built the rotors. I'll have Calvin next weekend when we come down, kind of just get his thoughts on building one of those engines, talk about it. I've got to get the engine out of the back of the Jeep. We did finish building it. And I'll do a super detailed video, you know, on like assembling, at least I guess what I do whenever I assemble an engine. I have to build another one for my truck here in the next month or so, so we'll do it on that. But, you know, kind of dropped the ball. It was nice to take the week off, but now you get to see me carry a rotary engine across the shop. And that's going to be the end of the video. So hopefully you did learn something about putting rotors together. I would say the rest of the engine build process is pretty straightforward when it goes to like actually stacking it up. Building the rotors is kind of where all the detail comes in. The rest of it's just keeping everything clean, putting it together. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one uploaded for you guys. I hope you guys had an awesome Thanksgiving. Calvin definitely had a good time learning how to put the engine together. We had... And, you know, the other reason why I didn't make a big deal out of filming, we had probably 8 people there while we were building that engine, just standing around watching, asking questions, doing things like that. So it only took us like an hour and a half. I guess it would have been a good one to have had like a live stream or, you know, maybe an hour-long video or whatever going on it. But, you know, I don't know exactly what the market is for that type of video on this YouTube channel. There's other videos of building rotaries out there, so... anyways, it's the day before I have to go back to work. This is that, oh my gosh, fresh engine, all put together. It doesn't have an oil pan, so it's not the most awkward thing to move, but it's still heavy. Alright, so the engine is now over there. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, whether you were able to travel or not. And we will see you in the next video working on the race car. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Keep it rad.